Good afternoon. Welcome to the Richie Winn Show. He has degrees in geology and philosophy, so he's a scientist and a thinker. He studied other sciences like economics, physics, climatology, but his real love is politics, breaking down liberal arguments into their logical components and exposing their flaws. Here's the host of The Logical Choice. Here's Richie!
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Richie Winn Show. I'm your host, Richie Winn. If you'd like to call in and be part of the program today, we got a whole bunch of news stories that we're talking about. Got a few questions for you guys, some follow-up from last week, and some brand new news stories from this morning. If you want to call in, our call-in number is 888-923-1380. That's 888-923-1380. We also have our text line set up if you just want to send a message on over. That number is 916-234-6263. That's 916-234-6263. So before we get into the stories today, I do have a couple of messages that came in throughout the week. One was a text that came in. It's a little long to read the entire thing. Very complimentary. Thank you very much for all the compliments about the show. And was talking about... where was it? Talking about how I was mentioning the Democrat Party all wearing white at the State of the Union, which looks a little. I mean, if your party created the KKK, wouldn't you want to stay away from that image as much as you could? But you know, whatever. That's how they want to do it. Go on ahead. And so the other thing that they were talking, they made a comment here saying, "I expect you to get calls on the subject from the Jefferson State people. Feel free, as you know, they're waiting for your support. I'm on pins and needles to see if they call you." So the state of Jefferson issue it's interesting to me, but at the same time, I feel a little sense of dread, just a tiny bit, just because I worry that it's just not going to work, that it's just going to be not taken seriously. It's just going to be laughed at, and it just will be completely ineffective. I did have a caller one time a few months ago. I was asking the question to everybody, which you're still welcome to call in and answer this question if you'd like. If you were tasked with turning California red, how would you do it? And one person called in saying, look, we need to have the state of Jefferson, and that will help. And my response to them was, come on, you're going to have support of Democrats to allow a section of California to splinter off. Because we don't have a majority here. We can't do this alone. We have to get consent of the Democrats in the state. I don't see how that's ever going to happen. And he proposed, why don't we make it a twofer and allow D.C. to be a state, which is something the Democrats have been pushing for a long time. They'd love to have 2 more senators in the U.S., and this would balance it out. I thought that was a brilliant idea. I don't know if that's enough to get it to work, but I certainly thought that it was a fantastic suggestion. And so the state of Jefferson is not really something I was planning on talking about today, but it does play in very well with another topic that I absolutely was planning on talking about today. And it's a story that's going on in Virginia with this popular vote pact. It's outrageous. It's basically specifically designed to undermine the Electoral College. So I'm going to get to that later because it's really important. A lot of people don't really know why the Electoral College is there. They don't know how it works. It just seems like this arcane, stupid system, and why not just let the people vote for who should be president? That's pretty much the nuts and bolts of all the arguments I hear against the Electoral College. Well, I'm going to explain later on why that's a terrible idea, basically. So before I get to that, though, we do have a couple of bigger stories today that just start. One is about Bloomberg, that he's mulling over picking Hillary as a VP. I don't know how this is a news story, quite honestly. Like, he's mulling over. This is someone who's in the campaign who has made this comment, and it's up on Drudge and everything as a headline. So what does that mean, mulling it over? Does this mean somebody during a meeting said, "Hey, what about picking Hillary for a VP?" And he just goes, I don't know. Oh, well, he mulled it over. Maybe that was I don't know how it happened. Maybe he was confiding in people, saying, "Look, this might be. I think this is my top choice for VP, but I don't know. What do you guys think?" And so maybe there was a discussion about it. But either way, I mean, so what? is a big part of it. There's that quote that I think it's misattributed, but it's often attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt about the small minds talk about people, average minds talk about ideas, average minds talk about events, great minds talk about ideas. And this just kind of seems to fit into the what's this person doing? And I don't care. I don't think Bloomberg's going to get the nomination. I think it's hilarious how the Democrats are just eating themselves over him getting into the race, and it's just kind of comical to sit back and eat some popcorn while they just devour one another. But either way, who he picks for VP, I really couldn't care less. I don't think he's going to win. I mean, first off, I don't think he's going to get the nomination. On top of that, I don't think he's going to win the presidency because I don't see any Democrat that seems to have any sort of real competition or threat to President Trump winning re-election. And I'm trying very hard not to be overly confident, trying hard not to be too presumptive about what's going to happen. But it looks, the speculation that I have is I'm cautiously optimistic. And it's not unreasonable to think that it could be a landslide. I mean, look at recent history. I mean, everybody likes to look at recent history as just being the last 4 or 8 years. But look at recent history going back. I mean, Nixon got a 49-state landslide. Reagan also got a 49-state state landslide. That's impressive, especially since they're Republicans. Both of them got California and New York. I don't think that President Trump's going to get a 49-state landslide. But how great would it be if he got even a 40-state? I mean, even, let's say the popular vote. I mean, when Obama won in 2008, he got, I think, 53.5% of the popular vote, something like that. And it was arguably described as a landslide. I think they're a little overly eager to describe it as a landslide. But I mean, it's decent. Some would say it's a mandate. It's a 6 or 7% gap. That's significant. How great would it be if President Trump won with 55 or even 60%? I mean, I think it'd be hilarious. Anything above Obama's number, and oh boy, the media is going to have a hard time describing what it is without using any of the same language. It's going to be really easy to point out the difference. But so this issue with Bloomberg, I don't even think Hillary. I don't think she's going to be vice president. I'll be surprised if she shows up on anybody's ticket as their VP, because Hillary hates losing, and she's really good at it. She's amazing at losing. Sometimes, well, basically her strategy whenever there's an election is to hope that the election happens quickly enough before she tries too hard and is successful in losing. Because she starts off with high poll numbers, and then they drop, and they drop, and they drop. And eventually they go low enough. If the election had been another month or two out, they probably would have dropped below 50%. But she did win the popular vote, and this is something that I'm going to get to later on when we talk about the Electoral College. And if you have any questions about the Electoral College, feel free to call in about those. 888-923-1380. We're going to be talking about it later on, and why it's so good, and why I honestly want more of it. And that may even be the solution to this state of Jefferson thing for here in California. I think it might be easier to accomplish and would probably have a better effect. Stay tuned to the Richie Winn Show, and I'll tell you why. We're going to be talking about that and Roger Stone. He's also in the news today and this whole week. We'll be back with the logical. Welcome back to the Richie Winn Show. I'm your host, Richie Winn. If you'd like to call in and ask any questions or comment on the stories that we're talking about, our call-in number is 888-923-1380. That's 888-923-1380. We also have our text line if you just want to send a message on over. That number is 916-234-6263. That's 916-234-6263. There was another message that I wanted to respond to earlier, an email that came in during the week saying, do you know of any list of issues/regulations, executive orders that Trump did to make the economy move up and up? All I get from the media is that Obama's efforts are now playing out, and that's frankly horse poop. And that's absolutely right. I don't know of a list because I do know that the list would be way too long. I think the last time I looked at it, it was somewhere between 15 and 20,000 things. Some of it, red tape. Some of it is legislation that was supposed to come through, and they prevented it from coming through. All sorts of different issues like that. But it's huge. They had a policy of they wanted to repeal 2 pieces of legislation for every single new one that they would propose. They lied. They didn't do a 2-for-1. It ended up being I want to say like a 20-to-1, or maybe something insanely higher than that. It was absolutely crazy how many regulations they were able to eliminate, repeal, prevent from being implemented, all that sort of stuff. But the list is way too long to. I'm sure somebody's compiled a highlight list, but I don't know offhand where it would be. Before we get back into the story too much, we do have Anne from Sacramento. Go ahead, Anne.
Well, I just wanted to say that Bloomberg and Mrs. Clinton can't be on the same ticket because they're from the same state, I think, registered in the same state.
I guess she was a senator from New York, but I don't know if she still lives. Do the Clintons still live in New York? I guess they do. Yeah, my producer's nodding at me. Yes.
And the other thing is, don't discount Bloomberg. I've gotten 3 mailers from him already.
Well, getting mailers. He's spending a lot of money.
That's what I mean.
But here's the thing. Like, I really don't view him or any of them as a threat. So Bernie Sanders, for instance, he won maybe in Iowa. I'm not sure we still even know. Did well in New Hampshire, and he's gaining in popularity. There was a poll recently trying to show how many people were supportive of socialism, saying that 43 or 45% are in favor of some socialism, and he's way over that. Bloomberg, I think, has the same issue. I think that, there's maybe 45% are okay with having a billionaire represent their party. Lots of them are not okay with that.
Well, no, I'm waiting to see Wisconsin call out the National Guard when they have their convention in Milwaukee. Really, they're working with dynamite.
Yeah, that would be entertaining to see that happen.
No, really, I'm serious, because those people that support Sanders will be very unhappy if he doesn't make it.
Yeah, and a lot of those are the Antifa people who are not known for their peaceful protests.
Exactly. This could be 1968 all over again. It's the same mentality. But at any rate, I don't discount Bloomberg, because he's buying his election, and he could. I'm a nonpartisan, and that's why I'm getting all these letters, all these.
Yeah, I remember you told me that you registered independent,
yes.
I think, or maybe declined to state.
No, it's called nonpartisan or no party.
Gotcha.
Whatever.
No party affiliation.
But at any rate, I just. Oh, please, Mrs. Clinton, go away.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the call, Ann. That was great, and I do feel bad for your mailbox of how much stuff you're going to get from all the Democrats vying so desperately for your vote. I sincerely hope that none of them actually get it. Not that it really even matters here in California. To a certain, I'm still saying go out and vote. Everybody, please go vote. I'm going to go vote, even in the primary, March 3rd. Don't forget, bring a friend. But at the same time, I'm not under any delusions that California is going to have this overwhelming support for President Trump. I'd love it to happen, but it seems incredibly unlikely. So the issue with, this issue with Bloomberg, I don't think he's likable. He's trying to buy his way into. He is literally buying his way into the election. The DNC has changed the rules so that he can be in there because he's spending lots of money of his own. He's not raising lots of money. People aren't donating to him, but he and supposedly Bloomberg said that he'd be happy to move his home to another state for this. But he's got plenty of money. I'm sure. Does he not already have a home in every state? Just change your residence. Like, oh, I don't live here anymore. Now I live in Florida. So, but either way, I don't see Hillary as being a good. I don't see her as being a good candidate at all. But even from their perspective, I don't see that anybody in the Democrat Party really looking as Hillary being your meal ticket to winning, because she didn't. I mean, she got the popular vote, but she's just been this harpy about it ever since, and everybody knows, well, that didn't work. It's still not going to work. You blew it. She's a loser who can't let go. Remember that story about the art installation in Italy? I'm pretty sure. I think it was some Scandinavian artist, but the installation was in Italy, of a mock-up of the Resolute desk, and her sitting there, not like a wax model of her or statue or projection. She went and participated in this with stacks of papers representing her emails. She can't let go of this. It was this Miss Havisham thing from the Dickens novel, where it's just awkward and creepy. And anyway, I don't. Anybody who puts her on the ticket will not win. I'll bet it. I'll bet you $1. if you want to call in and take me up on that bet, just don't everybody call in. But first person to call in, you want to bet $1 on that. I will bet you that come January of next year, Hillary will not be VP. So the other story is about Roger Stone. If you haven't been following what's been going with Roger Stone, I can't say I blame you. It seems like when you first hear stories, when I first heard stories of it, it seems like, oh, who's that guy? Didn't he have something to do with the campaign, and now he's in some legal trouble? I mean, I know there was that Manafort guy, and he was supposed to, supposedly be an illegally, kind of not a thug, but just a kind of a backdoor, not entirely legal methods sort of guy. So maybe he's just another one about that. So Roger Stone is the guy. He's 67, got raided by I think it was the FBI at like 5 o'clock in the morning. 70 some odd people are there to storm his house to make sure he doesn't come out guns blazing, or I don't even think he owns a gun. It was way, way overkill. And so there was a sentence. So he recently got convicted. It's a process crime. So the sentence recommendation is good. He hasn't been sentenced yet. He got convicted, but the sentencing hasn't come out yet. And the prosecutors have released their recommendation for sentencing of 7 to 9 years, which is absurd for what happened. So to tell you basically what happened, actually, you know what? Before I get to that, so this is fake news. What most of the story is. And this is how to spot fake news. Well, it's not always how to spot fake news, but this is an example of fake news. I have discussions with friends where they say, isn't it terrible what President Trump is doing? He tweets out about how the media is always fake news. It's this assault on the press, which we've never had from a president before. And I try to tell him, look, we've never had a press assaulting the president like we've had before. You think that he should just sit there and take it? Well, I'm sorry, but that's not how it works. You only think that because you disagree with the guy. That's why you don't want him fighting back. And President Trump fights back. So here's the stories. MSNBC, CNN, CBS, NBC, all of them have headlines about this. So those prosecutors, they had a recommendation. This week, the Department of Justice stepped in and they said, look, this is way too much. We're changing this recommendation to a recommendation of a lower sentencing. So here's MSNBC's headline. They said lead prosecutor in Roger Stone case resigns after DOJ announces plan to reduce sentence. CNN, top Mueller prosecutor of Trump ally Roger Stone's case resigns from D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. CBS, they said top prosecutor in Roger Stone case abruptly withdraws after DOJ intervention. And NBC, they had Roger Stone prosecutor resigns after DOJ backpedals on sentencing recommendation. So this sounds like this is maybe some shady stuff going on with President Trump. Maybe he's using the Department of Justice for his own, to try to protect his friends. There was even there's a discussion on the internet that was going on, and there was somebody, one of the top comments on this of somebody trying to just lay out, here's what happened. So, and I'm quoting from what they said. The first line was, Roger Stone is a longtime Trump advisor. He lied to Congress. He threatened to murder a witness. He was convicted by a jury of his peers. The prosecutor recommended 7 to 9 years. Trump tweeted that it was unfair and real crimes were committed by the other side. The DOJ overruled the prosecutor's recommendation within hours, and all 4 prosecutors involved resigned in protest. Those statements are mostly true. So how is it not the case that this is clearly a sign of President Trump doing all sorts of shady, unethical stuff of trying to utilize this. Well, there is a tremendous amount of extra information that doesn't get mentioned in any of these stories, or at least most of them. It's certainly not being discussed by people on the left or even acknowledged in some cases, not the least of which is the 4 prosecutors. They were rebuked by the department they represented for, quote, excessive and unwarranted, end quote, recommendation. Excessive and unwarranted by their own department. So here's what the situation actually is. These 4 prosecutors hate President Trump. They're suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. They are allowing their hatred of President Trump to affect their work. They can't go after him, so they're going to do whatever they can to the people that know him, the people that work with him, the people that like him. That's just the first of this extra information. There's a lot more. For Roger Stone, he was convicted as part of the Mueller probe into collusion, which found no evidence of collusion. This is one thing, I hate these sorts of stories. I really think that there should be some sort of bill. I don't know if we certainly won't be able to get it through Congress when President Trump is president. But if there's an investigation and a process crime derives from that investigation, if the investigation finds nothing, that should undo all of the process crimes. Because this is what they do. Because they know they can't get anything. If they know the investigation is unwarranted, like they knew with the Mueller investigation, literally weeks into it, they're just going to use that as a cudgel to try to beat whoever they can and interview them 50 different times, and on time 49, they're going to say, oh, you lied. You're going to jail. That's not fair, it's not right, and it's unethical. I've got more to talk about this. Stay tuned to The Richie Winn Show, the logical choice. Welcome back to The Richie Winn Show. I'm your host, Richie Winn. If you'd like to call in and be part of the program, our call-in number is 888-923-1380. That's 888-923-1380. We also have our text line set up, which we just got a text about. I'm going to read to you in a little bit. 916-234-6263. That's 916-234-6263. So just before the break, we did get a call that I'm going to go to. I did get a text that I'm going to respond to after the call. It's challenging something that I said, so I definitely want to respond to that. But before I do that, I'd like to go to Patrick in El Dorado City. Go ahead, Patrick.
No. El Dorado County.
Oh, El Dorado County.
I would go by the whole county.
Sorry about that.
Thanks, Richie. No worries. And it's a beautiful day up here in the hills.
Oh, wonderful.
A little bit of clouds earlier. It's sunny now. But I got a number of things. Basically, the first thing is, did they ever release the Iowa poll, the Des Moines Register?
I still haven't seen anything from that.
Right. Why is that? Fake news. They don't like the news. It's what they don't cover that makes a difference.
Oh, I absolutely agree with that. It is very telling to look at the stories they don't. Like the guy who drove into the Trump supporter thing recently. Right. They're not covering, if any, they're only covering how Republicans are reacting to that. They're not covering the story of the guy doing it at all.
Right, and it's just more indictments to the media. And I'm not surprised that the Sacramento Bee and the McClatchy Group went bankrupt. 10-1, basically retirees to employees. It's sad for the people, but you know what? They've been fake news for so long, and this is basically, I would almost never get their stuff unless one time a year, usually after election, to get all the election results.
Right.
The other thing is,
you called in about the state of Jefferson issue, right?
Well, I did want to talk about that as well. We basically, there's 22 counties up in Oregon. State of Jefferson actually started up in Oregon, 1935, in Coos County. The mayor of Port Alford, which was right on 101, he started the whole thing by wanting to get asphalt for 101. They had dirt roads out there, or gravel roads.
All right.
Nothing's changed, which is amazing.
They still don't have the 101 up there?
No, they do.
Oh, okay.
The issue is look at the roads in the rural areas. I mean, and then it's just gotten worse. Where the biggie is this, that there's a number, there's 35 counties in California right now out of 58 that are rural. And the people in L.A. and San Francisco and Sacramento they don't represent us. We've had our vote diluted 100 times since California came into existence.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's a fundamental problem. I see the only answer is to divide the state. If Trump ever got on board with what we're doing, it would really, really put the state of Jefferson on the map.
It would make a big difference. I agree.
Federal.
So you said you see that the state of Jefferson is the only solution.
Yes.
So I see a couple of other possible solutions, but I'd like to get your take on them. So the first one, which I think is equally unlikely, is if we were able to do a proportional system for the Electoral College, where you would just say, hey, if you get 60% of the California vote as a Democrat, you get 60% of our electoral votes. The other, 35, 38, whatever percentage they get, those will go to whoever gets those. I think that would, because California has 55 votes, far more than any other state. And that would make a huge difference, because Democrats count on getting all 55 of those for their election. They lose California, they lose the election. So if we could get a proportional, that seems like another, I think it's equally unlikely, but maybe slightly less, just because it's a little bit easier to do that rather than to create an entire new state.
I think there's only one state right now. It might, maybe two. I think Maine, and I think maybe even Nebraska.
I think you're right.
Like that, and so, but that would be a game changer, no doubt about it, because it would make it so that on the federal side, and the Electoral College is a very good thing. The founders were absolutely right, because otherwise, basically, nobody would go to the little states. They wouldn't care. And
right.
It's the same thing we have now in the state right now, and. So
here's the thing. Earlier I mentioned that I'm going to be talking about the Electoral College, and that's coming up. So, and I don't mean to kind of give away the punchline of what I'm going to get to at the end of it, but it's very relevant to this conversation. I think what we need is a version of the Electoral College in California, because the whole point of the Electoral College is to make sure that nobody runs away with an election because they just happen to be number one in the most populous cities, and they ignored everybody else in the country. And that's basically what's happening here in California. San Francisco, Sacramento, L.A., their opinions control everything that happens in the state, much to the dismay of many of the counties.
L.A. is bigger than 41 states, and they give us San Francisco politicians. And the reality is the people of L.A. basically, because I've talked to a lot of people who live down there, my college roommates in San Diego, and my thought is that it's, even from the beginning when California was formed, it was too big. And it was mainly because of the discovery of gold.
Right.
And the reality is, though, that this state does need to be divided just to make it more manageable. And we have so many regions. But I agree with you to some extent. I do think that Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution should be applied to California. And it may end up being that way in Texas as well, or New York,
Sure.
or Illinois.
I'm totally okay with that. All of the bigger states, they have a very diverse population. I think the population in California is the most diverse of the states. But either way, the needs of King County are wildly different from the needs of San Francisco County.
That's absolutely correct.
And I don't think that anybody should be running the entire state that gets to ignore either of those. So
well, I think right now we have urban versus rural. And that's pretty much across the whole country. I mean, if you look at the red and the blue, I mean, the blue is always in the big city.
Right.
I mean, the more urban they are, the more blue they are, and basically, and then they don't care about the red because they don't understand the red. I mean, just ask somebody where you get milk from, and they'll say, well, you get it from the store or you get it from the cow. I mean, really? But the reality is, see, now I grew up in Chicago, and I've been going the other direction ever since. Now, back to Ann's point about 1968, I lived it. I was basically 10 years old.
Chicago has definitely had a lot of problems because of the Democrat policies that have been running the state. I don't mean to cut you off, but I do need to get going. I got a bunch of stories that I got to get to, but thank you so much for the call. Such an important topic to discuss is, I mean, California is huge. There's so many people that I talk to that are conservative who just say, I'm so tired of this. I can't live here anymore. This isn't workable. I need to go somewhere else. And it breaks my heart when that happens, because I totally get it. Everybody needs to do what's best for their family. If you need to move to another state to do that, then that's what has to happen. But I wish people could stay and fight, because California is not a lost cause. And I think one of the best ways to do that would be to not abandon the Electoral College, but to enforce it more, to apply it in more places. It's really important. Before I get to that, I'm going to get to that after the break. I'll talk about that in the next segment, because I do want to get back to the story about Roger Stone, because it's really important. These other issues, the big problem I have with all of the Elizabeth Warren and everybody talking about how we need to combat people saying untrue things, and we need to censor the hate speech and that sort of stuff. It's so disingenuous, because one of the easiest ways to lie, one of the ways that is most common lying, especially in journalism, is through lies of omission. You don't give relevant information. You don't give context to what you're describing. This is one of the big things that was so hated by about the congressional move toward impeachment, is because they were interviewing people without Republicans there, without Republican committee members there. They just want to hear their side. So if the witness says something, if they're saying, okay, well, what did this person say to you? Oh, this person knew that Trump was extorting Ukraine. Okay, so did you talk to President Trump about it? Well, yes, I did. And what did he say? He said he wasn't. Well, crap. Well, we can't use that. Nobody tell the Republicans that this person said that this exculpatory evidence. That's what they were able to do. And it's so pernicious and terrible. So this isn't even comprehensive, but this is a lot of the relevant information to this Roger Stone story. So you can have these headlines and they're not saying untrue things. People, they say, oh, well, we fact-checked it. Everything they said was true. Yeah, you can fact-check it and have that all come back at true, and it's still wrong, because it's disregarding all of this other important, relevant information. This gives the impression, the original story gives the impression that this was a normal sentence. This is just prosecutors doing their job, recommending a normal sentence for a normal crime. It's not a normal crime. First off, it's not a normal crime because it's part of an investigation that found nothing. For instance, the charge of obstruction of justice, which isn't part of what applies to Roger Stone, but just the idea of obstruction of justice. The idea is that you are obstructing justice. If they do an investigation which finds no injustice happened, how can you obstruct it? If there was no injustice, you didn't obstruct justice from happening. No justice had to happen. Now, I get that this can't be necessarily applied everywhere. If somebody's investigating you for murder and you lie to them and maybe you don't let them investigate, maybe they have a search warrant and you try to fight them off or something like that. Sure, I get that needs to happen, but although from my understanding, I've talked to a few attorneys, they say that a lot of times, not all the time, especially in very egregious situations, but a lot of the time, if it turns out there's nothing there, they don't end up prosecuting the obstruction of justice. But either way, here's some of the other information. Roger Stone was never charged for working with Russia to influence the 2016 election, and that's what the investigation was about. It was about investigating the Russia link to the 2016 election. He also, basically, the prosecutor said that he lied when he denied speaking with anyone on the Trump campaign about the WikiLeaks and the DNC emails, which is not really related. They thought, well, maybe Russia was behind this. Turns out they weren't. So it was just an ancillary, maybe related, turns out it's not related thing that he ends up lying about. And even the other thing that they neglect in these articles is that they found no evidence that Stone or any other Trump associate had any direct contact with anyone at WikiLeaks involved in obtaining and releasing Democrat emails. So he didn't even talk to anybody at WikiLeaks there, which is the whole thing that he was supposed. Basically, he lied about saying that he didn't talk to anybody about the WikiLeaks thing. Okay, if he brings it up to them, but he never talked to anybody at WikiLeaks in the first place, and this isn't even a crime. I feel like I'm going to talk till I'm blue in the face. So many irrelevant, pointless, nothing things happened, but he lied about one of them, so you want to put him away for 7 to 9 years? Are you kidding me? It's absurd. I want to get to the text that was challenging me when we get back. Stay tuned to the Richie Winn Show, The Logical Choice. Welcome back to the Richie Winn Show. I'm your host, Richie Winn. If you'd like to call in, I almost don't want to give the number out. We've got one last segment. If you want to call in, do it quickly. 888-923-1380. That's our call-in number, 888-923-1380. We also have our text line set up at 916-234-6263, 916-234-6263. So I got a call. This was not during this break, but the break before. Didn't get a chance to get to it, but I do want to address this. And so it said, Richie, you mentioned your interest in eating popcorn while the Democrats trash each other during the debates and in the media. How about Trump trashing Ron Paul's looks, Ted Cruz's wife's looks, accusing his old man of killing JFK, trashing Marco Rubio's hands, Carly Fiorina's looks, among other insults? Now the Democrats engage in mild differences around policy, and Trump is the adult in the room? So, here's the thing. First off, no one's really calling Trump the adult in the room. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, there's a huge segment of Republicans that are the anti-Trump ones. As far as I'm aware, there's very few policy disagreements that cause people to be anti-Trump. They're all character-based. They're all, he tweets too much. He acts like a child. He does whatever. He insults people like this. And quite frankly, I mean, if I had my show during the 2016 primaries, then I would have said this on the air. Unfortunately, I was just debating politics with my friends and only had, so they're the only witnesses to this. But I didn't defend President Trump doing this, with then candidate Trump. I didn't think it was good. Were some of the things kind of funny? Okay, sure, but it's, you know, it's like laughing at fart jokes. You know, do you hear one that's funny every once in a while? Sure. Do you want your kids telling nothing but that all the time? No. So, sure, I mean, it's kind of a guilty pleasure to laugh at some of the things that he says, just like it's a guilty pleasure to watch some of the Democrats eat each other. And when Trump was doing this, when he was causing all this infighting, there were plenty of Democrats who were laughing about this as well. So the thing is, Democrats are not engaging in mild differences around policy. That is incredibly understating the situation. This is a huge deal. I mean, I played the clip a couple of weeks ago of Michael Moore just about blowing a gasket that Bloomberg was even being allowed into the debate. He is outraged by it. Bernie Sanders supporters are outraged by what the DNC is doing to try to keep Sanders from getting the election. Everybody else is worried, yelling even that Bernie Sanders is way too socialist and it will not win, which I happen to agree with. I think that he's going to alienate a huge percentage. And I don't get it. I don't want to complain, but I don't get it. They have tried this before. They ran Walter Mondale against Reagan. Are you kidding me? If you have someone who is doing an amazing job of capturing the middle, do you say, all right, we're going to abandon the middle, we're going to run way away from it, and that'll win us the election? Seriously? What I mean, at least when we had McCain, it wasn't a re-election campaign, but clearly we were trying to get the middle, and Obama was doing a great job of motivating people who typically do not vote. He was getting a huge swath of non-traditional Democrat voters. And we ran McCain, who was a moderate, liberal by some standards. I was not wild about having McCain as our representative, but at least that was a decent... If it hadn't been him, maybe, you know. But either way, the strategy was at least there to, we're going to take a moderate to fight a moderate. Not that Obama's a moderate, but he was capturing moderate votes. You don't decide, okay, we're going to abandon this, and we're going to run with, I don't know, Rush Limbaugh. He doesn't want to run for it. He's made comments that he couldn't handle the pay cut being president. But you don't try and take the most alienating person who only will capture the hardcore fringe part of the wing and abandon the moderates. Anyway, so to respond, those are not mild policy differences. And yeah, I can laugh at it. I don't support pettiness. I don't think it's good when people just fling insults at each other. Are they funny sometimes and clever? Yeah, they can be. But overall, I would rather they were not there than were there. So I'm going to be consistent. If the Democrats do it, I'm going to criticize them. If the Republicans do it, I'm going to criticize them, regardless of whether they're doing it about Democrats or Republicans across the board. So I do want to get to the story about the Electoral College because it's really important. So Virginia right now, they have just passed in their state house a popular vote pact. And basically what this is, they're trying to sneakily get around the Constitution. The Constitution lays out very clearly how presidents are to be elected. They're to be elected by the Electoral College. So, and those delegates, they get to vote. You get one delegate per representative. So that means one for every representative in Congress plus 2 senators. So it works out to be, so there's 435 members of Congress, 100 members in the Senate. It would be 535, except D.C. also gets some representatives. They don't get senators, so it's 538. You divide that in half, it's 269. So half plus 1, you need 270 votes, electoral votes, to win the election. And Trump did that. Hillary did not. So he won. The only thing, though, is how the electoral votes are chosen. That's not defined in the Constitution. Well, it is, only to the extent that they say the states get to pick how they do that. Most states at this point have just done a strict popular vote. They've mandated that, okay, if you are a representative, you are one of the electoral votes for our state, you must vote the way our state votes in a take it or leave it situation. Or in a all or nothing situation. So if somebody wins 51% of the popular vote in the state, all the delegates go for that candidate. So that results in having it be possible to win the Electoral College and lose the popular vote. It's happened twice recently. Happened to Bush when he won in 2000, and it happened to Trump in 2016. So what these states are trying to do, so they can't say, well, we want to abandon the Electoral College. People do want to do that. There's a huge push to abandon the Electoral College, but it's in the Constitution. You would need an amendment to the Constitution to get rid of it. Getting a new amendment is a very tall order. So they want to be sneaky. They said, okay, since we get to decide how the votes are going to go, we're going to say that the votes, that the Electoral College votes for our state are going to go to whoever wins the national vote, even if our state votes differently. That way, you can never have a situation like Hillary Clinton losing the Electoral College, losing the election, but winning the popular vote. The only thing, though, is because this could totally blow up in their face and everything. So they've said that it's going to be a pact where this will only go into effect if they can get enough states to equal 270 electoral votes. Virginia has 13. So basically, it's passed their House. They have, with a Democrat-controlled House. Now it has to go to their Senate, where they have a Democrat majority. Then it goes to their governor. And guess what? He's a Democrat as well. So this is probably going to happen. They will join. There's a number of other states that have already done this. We're one of them, unfortunately. Altogether, so far there are a total of 192 Electoral College votes between all of these states. Most of them are big, but there's California, Oregon, Washington, New Mexico, Illinois, New York, of course, all the big ones, but some smaller ones. There's Delaware in here, Vermont in here, Rhode Island, Connecticut. So altogether, they're up to 192. So it doesn't go into effect yet. But they only need a little bit more. And there's a number of other states where it's already passed one or both houses. It did pass both in Nevada, but it got vetoed there, thankfully. But if these other states, Arizona, Oklahoma, Minnesota, Arkansas, Michigan, North Carolina, Virginia, it's already passed one house there. If it passes the other house and gets signed by the governor, that equals 270. That list right there. If Nevada were to somehow, if they got a Democrat in there, chances are these houses would repass it again, and then that person would sign it. That'd put them up to 276. This is a huge problem. The entire purpose of the Electoral College is to make sure there's diversity. The Democrats, especially liberals, I really should separate here between leftists and liberals. It's the leftist part of the party. The people pushing the party left. They are obsessed with race and with categorizing people by race. It is extraordinarily racist to do this. And I don't care what your intentions are, if it's try to help someone, to try to hurt someone, to try to make things fair. Once you start categorizing people by race, it's racist. I'm sorry. That's what it is. And this is what they keep wanting to do with these identity politics, with this intersectional politics. They're categorizing people by categories that don't matter to how they live their lives. The politics the categories that do matter to how people live their lives are based on values.